You're sitting there right now wondering if you made the wrong choice. That gnawing feeling in your stomach, the whispers of doubt from well-meaning friends and family, the societal pressure bearing down on your shoulders like a ton of bricks. When are you going to settle down? They ask. Don't you get lonely? They wonder. There must be something wrong with you, they imply, never quite saying it out loud, but letting it hang in the air like a dark cloud. That discomfort you're feeling isn't because you've made the wrong choice. It's because you've made the right one, and the world hasn't caught up with your wisdom yet. For centuries, we've been fed a carefully crafted narrative about relationships being the ultimate goal of human existence. We've been told that finding the one is life's greatest achievement, that sharing your life with someone else is the only path to true fulfillment. But I'm here today to shatter that illusion, to help you see that living alone isn't just an acceptable alternative. It's potentially the most powerful choice you could ever make for your personal growth and spiritual evolution. The truth is, we've been looking at solitude all wrong. We've been treating it like a waiting room, a temporary state, until something better comes along. But what if I told you that this waiting room is actually the destination? What if the very state you've been conditioned to fear and avoid is actually the gateway to the most profound personal transformation you could ever experience? Think about the last time you were in a relationship. Really think about it. Remember how much of yourself you compromised, not because they asked you to, but because that's what relationships demand. Remember how many of your dreams you put on hold, how many of your quirks you tried to smooth out, how many of your authentic expressions you diluted to maintain harmony. We call this growing together, but too often it's really about shrinking ourselves to fit into someone else's idea of who we should be. When you live alone, something magical happens. The energy you used to spend managing someone else's emotions, juggling their expectations, and navigating the complex dance of compromise, all of that energy gets redirected inward. It becomes fuel for your own growth, your own dreams, your own spiritual journey. I see some of you shifting uncomfortably in your seats. Good. Discomfort is the first sign of growth. It means we're pushing against the boundaries of our conditioned beliefs. Let's push a little harder. Society has sold us the myth that self-sufficiency equals selfishness, that choosing to live alone means you're somehow less capable of love, less evolved in your humanity. What if the most selfless thing you could do is become completely self-sufficient? What if by learning to meet all your own emotional, spiritual, and physical needs, you actually become more capable of authentic connection with others? When you live alone, you develop a relationship with yourself. That's impossible to cultivate when you're constantly managing the dynamics of a romantic partnership. You learn to sit with your thoughts without the distraction of someone else's presence. You learn to face your fears without using another person as a shield. You learn to validate your own choices without seeking external approval. This isn't about isolation. It's about integration. It's about becoming so completely whole within yourself that you no longer need someone else to complete you. And here's the beautiful paradox. When you no longer need someone else to complete you, your connections with others become infinitely more powerful because they're chosen from a place of wholeness rather than need. I've watched countless individuals transform their lives by embracing solitude. People who thought they were broken because they couldn't maintain long-term relationships discovered they weren't broken at all. They were simply more evolved than the paradigm they were trying to fit into. They were attempting to force themselves into a model of living that no longer serves humanity's highest potential. This isn't about denouncing love or connection. It's about elevating these concepts beyond their current limited expressions. When you live alone, you don't love less. You love more purely because your love isn't clouded by dependency or obligation. You don't connect less. You connect more authentically because your connections aren't bound by the constraints of romantic expectations. The world needs more people who are willing to break free from the old paradigms of relationship and dependency. It needs more individuals who are courageous enough to stand alone, not because they can't handle intimacy, but because they understand that the highest form of intimacy begins with the self. As you sit here today, I want you to consider that the path you've chosen or the path that's choosing you isn't a lesser path. It's not a consolation prize or a temporary state. until something better comes along. Living alone is a sacred journey of self-discovery, a powerful statement of self-worth, and potentially the most transformative choice you could make in your lifetime. Your home isn't empty because you live alone. It's full of possibilities that could never exist if you were sharing that space with another person. Your bed isn't half empty. It's completely full with your own presence, your own dreams, your own unlimited potential. Your time isn't being wasted. It's being invested in the most important relationship you'll ever, the relationship with yourself. The most profound truth about living alone is this: in solitude, you discover that everything you've been seeking in relationships was already within you. Every feeling of completion, every sense of belonging, every moment of joy, it's all there, waiting to be uncovered beneath the layers of societal conditioning that told you these things could only come from another person. Let me share something powerful with you. In my years of speaking with thousands of people, I've noticed a fascinating pattern. Those who embrace living alone don't just survive. They thrive in ways that consistently surprise everyone around them. Their creativity explodes. Their spiritual awareness deepens. Their professional lives transform. Why? Because when you remove the constant energy drain of managing a romantic relationship, you suddenly have vast resources available for your own evolution. Think about energy for a moment. We all have a finite amount each day. When you're in a relationship, where does that energy go? To morning conversations about who's doing what, to text messages checking in, to emotional processing about each other's days, to negotiating weekend plans, to managing not just your own moods and needs, but someone else's too. Now imagine redirecting all that energy inward. Imagine having every single unit of your daily energy available for your own growth, your own dreams, your own spiritual journey. Some people call this selfish. I call it sacred, because here's what happens when you fully commit to living alone. You become a more powerful force for good in the world. You develop the ability to give from a place of true abundance rather than emotion. Your relationships with friends, family, and even strangers become more authentic because they're chosen rather than obligate. The world desperately needs people who have found their center, who don't need external validation to know their worth, who can stand firmly in their truth without needing someone else to hold them up. In other words, the world needs more people who have mastered the art of living alone. But let's talk about something that few people discuss: the incredible freedom of mental space that comes with living alone. When you live alone, your mind becomes a sacred sanctuary. Your thoughts are truly your own, uninfluenced by the constant presence of another person's perspective. This mental clarity leads to deeper insights, more authentic decisions, and a level of self-trust that's nearly impossible to develop when you're constantly checking your choices against someone else's opinion. I've watched people transform their entire lives once they embrace living alone. Artists who finally created their masterpieces, entrepreneurs who finally launched their dream businesses, spiritual seekers who finally found their true path. Why? Because living alone gives you the ultimate luxury, the freedom to follow your inner voice without compromise. But here's where it gets really interesting. The benefits of living alone extend far beyond your personal space. When you master solitude, you develop what I call unshakable presence. This is the ability to remain completely centered and at peace regardless of external circumstances. Think about how powerful that is. When you no longer need someone else to feel complete, you become capable of showing up for others in a way that truly serves them rather than seeking to fill your own emotional needs. Let's address the fear that holds so many back, the fear of growing old alone. This fear is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of what it means to be alone. Being alone doesn't mean being lonely. In fact, some of the loneliest people I've ever met were in relationships. They were lonely because they had lost touch with themselves in the process of trying to maintain their partnership. When you live alone, you develop relationships with yourself and others that are far richer and more meaningful than the default script of romantic partnership. You create communities based on shared values and authentic connection rather than societal expectations. You build friendships that aren't limited by the boundaries of romantic commitment. The truth is, living alone is not about closing yourself off from love. It's about opening yourself up to a much broader, deeper understanding of what love truly is. It's about recognizing that the most important relationship you'll ever have is with yourself. And when that relationship is solid, every other connection in your life becomes more meaningful. Every great spiritual teacher throughout history had periods of profound solitude. Every significant breakthrough in human consciousness came through individuals who were willing to stand alone in their truth. What if your choice to live alone isn't just a personal preference, but part of a larger evolutionary movement toward a new way of being human? The path of living alone requires courage. It demands that you face yourself fully, that you learn to sit comfortably in silence, that you develop the strength to validate your own choices without needing external approval. But the rewards are beyond anything society's traditional relationship model can offer. When you live alone, you become the author of your own story. Your home becomes a temple of self-discovery. Your time becomes a canvas for creating the life you truly want. Your energy becomes a force for transformation, not just for yourself, but for everyone whose life you touch. I see some of you nodding now. You're starting to feel it, aren't you? That resonance with the truth you've always known, but perhaps feared to embrace, that recognition that the path you're on or the path you're considering isn't a lesser choice, but potentially the most powerful choice you could make for your own evolution and the evolution of human consciousness. Living alone isn't just about having your own space. It's about creating space for a new way of being human. It's about pioneering a path that challenges our species' old patterns of dependency and opens up new possibilities for authentic connection. Let's talk about transformation. Real, deep, soul-level transformation. The kind that changes not just how you live, but who you fundamentally are. Living alone creates the perfect container for this kind of profound change. And I'll tell you what, when you live alone, you develop what I call the sacred witnesses. That part of you that can observe your own patterns, triggers, and reactions without judgment. In relationships, it's easy to project our issues onto our partners, to blame external circumstances for our internal states. But when you live alone, there's nowhere to hide from yourself. And that's exactly where the magic begins. You start to notice things, the way you talk to yourself when no one's around, the habits you fall into when there's no one else to consider, the dreams you've been putting off because they didn't fit into someone else's life plan. This awareness becomes your greatest teacher, your guide to unprecedented personal. But here's what's truly fascinating: as you develop this relationship with yourself, something extraordinary happens to your relationship with time. In our society, we're taught to view time alone as empty space that needs to be filled. We're conditioned to see blank spaces in our calendar as problems to be solved. But when you live alone and fully embrace it, time becomes your ally rather than your enemy. Those quiet Sunday mornings become opportunities for deep reflection rather than spaces to fill. Those evening hours become sacred time for creative expression rather than obligations to entertain or be entertained. The very nature of time transforms because you're no longer splitting it between your needs and someone else's. This is where many of you might be thinking, but what about intimacy? What about those basic human needs for touch, for connection, for sharing? Let me challenge everything you think you know about intimacy. True intimacy isn't about physical proximity or shared living space. It's about the depth of connection you can create, first with yourself and then with others. When you live alone, you develop a kind of intimacy with yourself that most people never experience. You learn to be completely comfortable in your own presence. You develop the ability to sit with your own emotions without needing someone else to validate them or make. This self-intimacy becomes a foundation for deeper connections with everyone in your life. And here's the beautiful paradox. The more comfortable you become with being alone, the more capable you become of creating authentic connections with others. Because you're no longer reaching out from a place of need or emptiness. You're reaching out from a place of fullness, of wholeness, of complete self-sufficiency. Think about the quality of your relationships when you're not depending on any single person to meet all your emotional needs. Think about the freedom to connect with others based purely on resonance rather than convenience or fear of being alone. This is what becomes possible when you master the art of living alone. But let's go deeper. Let's talk about the spiritual dimension of this choice. Living alone creates space for what I call soul silence. Those moments when you can hear your own inner wisdom with perfect clarity. In our noisy, constantly connected world, this kind of silence has become precious and rare. When you live alone, you have the opportunity to cultivate it daily. In this silence, you begin to understand that aloneness and loneliness are two entirely different things. Loneliness is a feeling of disconnection from yourself, from others, from life itself. Aloneness, when embraced fully, is a state of complete connection with your own essence, with the universe, with the very source of existence. This is where your real power lies. When you can sit in complete comfort with your own aloneness, you become unstoppable because you're no longer operating from a place of need or lack. You're operating from a place of complete self-containment, of total alignment with your own truth. Every major decision you make from this place of aligned solitude comes from pure wisdom rather than compromise. Every goal you pursue comes from authentic desire rather than the need to please or accommodate others. Every relationship you choose to engage in comes from genuine connection rather than fear of being alone. The world tries to tell us that success means having someone to come home to, someone to share your life with. But what if true success means becoming the kind of person who is completely at home with themselves? What if the highest achievement isn't finding the perfect partner, but becoming so completely whole within yourself that you no longer need external complete? This is what living alone offers you. The opportunity to become your own source of validation, your own source of comfort, your own source of joy. And from this place of complete self-sufficiency, you become capable of giving to others in ways that truly serve them rather than serving your own needs for validation or completion. You become a lighthouse, a steady, self-contained, offering guidance and inspiration to others, not through your words, but through your very way of being. Your life becomes proof that there's another way to exist, another way to find fulfillment, another way to experience love and connection that doesn't require giving up your sovereignty or compromising your truth. The choice to live alone isn't just a lifestyle choice. It's a revolutionary act. It's a declaration of independence from outdated paradigms of happiness and success. It's a statement that you trust yourself enough to be your own companion, your own comfort, your own source of joy and validation. Let's talk about power. Real power, the kind that comes from being completely aligned with your own truth. When you live alone, you have the opportunity to develop this power in ways that aren't possible when you're constantly adapting to another person's presence. Think about decisions for a moment. Every single decision you make when you live alone comes from a place of pure authenticity. What time you wake up, what you eat, how you arrange your space, how you spend your evenings. These aren't compromises or negotiations. They're pure expressions of your own truth. This might sound simple, but it's revolutionary. In a world that's constantly telling us who to be, how to live, what to want, this kind of authentic decision-making becomes a form of spiritual practice. Each choice you make from this place of solitude builds your inner strength, your trust in yourself, your connection to your own wisdom. But here's where it gets really interesting. When you live alone, you develop what I call sovereign energy. This is the energy of complete self-containment, of being whole and complete within yourself. It's the energy that great teachers and leaders throughout history have emanated. It's the energy that draws people to you, not because you need them, but because your very presence inspires them to discover their own completeness. Some people worry that living alone means giving up deep connections with others. Nothing could be further from the truth. When you live alone and develop this sovereign energy, your connections with others actually become deeper and more meaningful. Why? Because you're connecting from a place of wholeness rather than need. Think about it. When you're not dependent on others for your emotional well-being, you're free to love them exactly as they are. You're free to support their growth without trying to shape them into what you need them to be. You're free to let relationships evolve naturally without forcing them into predetermined societal scripts. This is where your real power to impact the world emerges. When you're fully established in your solitude, you become a living demonstration of what's possible. Your very existence challenges others to question their assumptions about happiness and fulfillment. You become a permission giver, showing others that there's another way to live. Let's talk about creativity for a moment. When you live alone, your entire living space becomes a canvas for creative expression. Your time becomes a medium for exploring your passions without interruption. Your energy becomes available for deep dives into whatever calls to your soul. This uninterrupted creative flow leads to breakthroughs that aren't possible when your energy is constantly being divided. I've seen people write books, start movements, create masterpieces, not because they had more talent than others, but because they had the courage to create the space for their gifts to fully emerge. But there's something even more profound that happens when you fully embrace living alone. You begin to understand that relationships aren't about finding someone to complete you. They're about celebrating each other's completeness. This understanding transforms every connection in your life. Your friendships become deeper because they're chosen rather than needed. Your family relationships evolve because you're relating from a place of wholeness rather than obligation. Your professional connections become more powerful because you're operating from a place of self-contained authority rather than dependency. This is where many of you might be thinking about the practical aspects of living alone. Yes, there are logistics to manage. Yes, there are times when having another pair of hands would make things easier. But consider this, every time you figure something out on your own, every time you solve a problem independently, every time you face a challenge and overcome it solo, you're building what I call capability confidence. This capability confidence becomes a foundation for everything else in your life. It's the knowing deep in your bones that you can handle whatever life throws at you. It's the certainty that you don't need anyone else to rescue you, support you, or complete you. This doesn't mean you can't accept help or enjoy support when it's offered. It means you're not dependent on it. Living alone also gives you the opportunity to develop what I call sacred rituals. These aren't just routines. They're intentional practices that connect you with your own essence. The way you start your morning, the way you end your day, the little ceremonies you create for yourself. These become anchors for your spiritual growth. When you live alone, your home becomes more than just a living space. It becomes a sanctuary for your soul's evolution. Every corner can be arranged to support your growth. Every moment can be used for your development. Every decision can be aligned with your highest truth. But perhaps the most powerful aspect of living alone is this. You become living proof that happiness, fulfillment, and success don't depend on following society's prescribed path. You demonstrate through your very existence that there's another way to live, another way to find meaning, another way to experience love and connection. This is where your responsibility comes in. As someone who has chosen this path, who has discovered the power of conscious solitude, you have obligation to live it fully, to embrace it completely, to demonstrate through your life that this isn't a lesser choice. It's potentially the most empowering choice a person can make. We're standing at the edge of a great evolutionary leap in human consciousness. The old paradigms of relationship, success, and fulfillment are crumbling. The world is crying out for a new way of being, a new understanding of what it means to be truly, and you? Yes, you have chosen or are considering choosing to live alone. You are at the forefront of this evolution. Let me be crystal clear about something. The choice to live alone isn't just about personal preference anymore. It's about being part of a larger movement toward authentic human development. It's about pioneering a new way of being that could literally change the course of human evolution. For millennia, humans have been taught that dependency is normal, that needing someone else to feel complete is natural, that being alone is somehow a failure of the human experience. But what if all of that was just programming? What if it was all part of an outdated operating system that no longer serves humanity's highest potential? You who live alone or are considering this path are the ones breaking free from this old programming. You're the ones showing that there's another way to experience life, another way to find fulfillment, another way to create meaning and purpose. But here's what's really extraordinary. As you embrace living alone, as you develop this complete self-sufficiency, you become a more powerful force for good in the world. Because when you're not spending energy managing a romantic relationship, when you're not constantly compromising your truth to maintain harmony with a partner, all of that energy becomes available for your life's true purpose. This is where many of you will discover your real mission. In the silence of your own company, in the clarity of your undiluted thoughts, in the power of your uncompromised energy, you'll find what you're really here to do. And it's likely to be something far bigger than you imagined when you were caught up in the old paradigm of seeking completion through relationship. The world needs you to make this choice consciously and to live it fully. It needs you to demonstrate through your life that happiness doesn't depend on finding the one. It needs you to show that success isn't measured by relationship status. It needs you to prove that the most profound love story you can live is the one between you and your own soul. Every time you embrace your solitude with joy rather than resignation, you make it easier for someone else to do the same. Every time you create a beautiful life on your own terms, you become living proof that it's possible. Every time you show up in the world as a whole, complete being, you give others permission to discover their own completeness. This is spiritual activism at its finest. You're not just living your life, you're helping to reshape humanity's understanding of what's possible. You're not just making a personal choice. You're contributing to a collective evolution in consciousness. So what does this mean for you right now in this moment? It means embracing your choice with complete conviction. It means releasing any lingering doubt about whether you're missing out on something. It means understanding that you're not just living alone. You're pioneering a new way of being human. Let me share something profound with you. The very fact that you're drawn to this path, that you're willing to consider or have already chosen this way of living, suggests that you're part of a leading edge in human development. You're part of a group of souls who have incarnated at this time to help humanity evolve beyond its patterns of dependency and into a new paradigm of self-actualized living. This is your moment. This is your time to fully embrace your path, to let go of any remaining shame or doubt about your choice, to step fully into your power as a self-contained, sovereign being. The world needs your example now more than ever. Look around you. Look at the relationships you see, the marriages built on mutual dependency, the partnerships held together by fear of being alone. Now imagine a world where more people had the courage to choose what you're choosing, to develop complete wholeness within themselves before entering into relationships, if they choose to enter them at all. This isn't about closing your heart. This isn't about building walls. This is about creating such a strong foundation within yourself that you become capable of loving others from a place of true freedom rather than need. This is about developing such complete self-sufficiency that your connections with others become expressions of joy rather than attempts to fill an inner void. As you leave here today, I want you to hold this truth in your heart. Your choice to live alone isn't a fallback position. It isn't a consolation prize. It isn't a temporary state until something better comes along. It's a conscious, powerful choice to pioneer a new way of being human. You are the ones showing the world that it's possible to be complete within yourself. You are the ones demonstrating that true fulfillment comes from within. You are the ones proving that the most important relationship you'll ever have is with your own soul. The path you've chosen isn't the easy path. It requires courage to stand alone in a world that's obsessed with coupling. It requires strength to maintain your sovereignty in a society that promotes dependency. It requires wisdom to see the truth beyond the cultural programming. But you are ready. You wouldn't be drawn to this path if you weren't ready to walk it. You wouldn't be resonating with these words if you weren't meant to embody this truth. You wouldn't be feeling this stirring in your soul if you weren't prepared to be part of this evolutionary leap in human consciousness. So step fully into your power. Embrace your solitude as the gift it truly is. Let your life become a testimony to the possibility of complete self-contained wholeness. Because in doing so, you're not just creating a beautiful life for yourself, you're helping to birth a new way of being human. The world is waiting for you, not to find your perfect match, not to complete yourself through another person, but to demonstrate through your life what's possible when a human being discovers their own completeness and has the courage to live from that truth. This is your time. This is your path. This is your truth. Embrace it fully, live it powerfully, and watch as your example helps transform the world, one sovereign soul at a time.